Last week we saw the final conclusion to the Battle of Buna-Gona, one of the bloodiest engagements of the New Guinea Campaign, and we also saw the reduction of the Gifu, the last Japanese strongpoint around Mount Austin. With General Patch's initial phase of his January offensive concluded, the Japanese now face annihilation as the Americans are set to continue their advance westward. Only Operation KE, the planned evacuation of this island of death, can save them. But this would inevitably lead to another confrontation between the IJN and the US Navy. Thus, join us as we delve into the Battle of Rennell Island and the lead-up to the Japanese evacuation of Guadalcanal. If you're wondering what's happening elsewhere in the World War, or want some analysis on World War II battles, we've got a series to recommend from our sponsor Magellan TV, the hidden gem of documentary streaming platforms in the modern age. To see what we mean, go watch their Battlefields of the World War series, which covers some decisive battles from the First and Second World Wars, with a focus on uncovering just why they played out as they did. By studying the tactics and technologies involved, the fog of war can be cleared, and the reasons why the fates of whole peoples can be sealed in minutes on the battlefield begin to emerge. If you're liking our Pacific War series, then definitely check this one out. You'll also find the biggest and best collection of other history content on Magellan TV, focusing on the drama of real life and real people taking part in historic events, all done with extremely good quality for the low price of entry, and with good results. It's the highest rated documentary streaming app on Google Play. More than 20 hours of new content is added weekly, 4K options never cost extra, and there's not a single ad to be seen. Watch Battlefields of the World Wars or anything else you like for free by using our free trial of Magellan TV, available at our link in the description. By January 13th, the situation looked bleak for the 17th Army. Facing a full American offensive aimed at destroying their forces, the Japanese had to weigh in three different options: to mount an aggressive defense, risking a quick collapse, to conduct a cautious defense and prolong the struggle as long as possible, or to implement the Gyokusai strategy, which consisted of launching a massed attack either in the coastal area or inland with the objective of capturing the enemy headquarters. As the 17th Army eventually decided to try to prolong the defense while holding on to a portion of the island, an express run was launched on January 14th to aid them, bringing provisions, the Yano Battalion, and the orders for the withdrawal. The Yano Battalion, which was to conduct the rearguard during Operation KE, consisted of 750 replacements for the 230th Regiment, which was led by Major Yano Keiji, an expert in rearguard actions. Heavy weather shrouded the 9 destroyers of the reinforcement unit, now under the command of Admiral Kimura, so they would land their load at Cape Esperance without problem, though on the way back they would suffer a heavy air attack. At dawn on January 15th, the orders for the withdrawal operation would finally be delivered to the 17th Army headquarters, with many staff officers protesting that the army was in no condition to withdraw, that this action would betray those already lost and those encircled, and that the withdrawal would be too costly to Japan in ships and planes. For them, it was better that the 17th Army sacrifice itself as a last service to the nation, but the orders came from the Emperor, and thus had to be carried out begrudgingly. Meanwhile, by January 16th, General Patch had distributed his plan for the next phase of his offensive, aimed at a line from Hill 87 that angled northeast to the beach. For the coastal front, the 6th Marines and the 182nd and 147th Regiments were selected to secure the area of Hills 94 and 93, forming the unique and hybrid Composite Army Marine Division. While further south, the 25th Division of General Collins was tasked with an advance inland to seize Hills 87, 88 and 89 by enveloping or turning the enemy right flank. Assuming that the Japanese would defend Hill 87 in force, Collins decided to send the 27th Regiment to a narrow ridge called the Snake, from where the Americans would advance west to attack the hill with the objective of drawing the main Japanese attention. At the same time, the 161st Regiment would mount the main effort through a deep envelopment from the Galloping Horse to the southwest, tasked with quickly seizing hills X, Y, and Z, and then continuing northwest to outflank Hill 87 and directly capture hills 88 and 89. On January 21st, the second phase of the offensive was thus launched, with the 2nd Battalion, 161st Regiment easily occupying hills X and Y against minor resistance, and with the 27th Regiment preparing to start its advance on the narrow front. But just as Colonel Clarence Orndorff was planning to attack Hill 87 from Hill Y on the morning of January 22nd, the 1st Battalion, 27th Regiment started its advance after a devastating air bombardment of the enemy positions, quickly crushing 3 Japanese machine guns blocking the advance down the Snake's back, and then successfully seizing Hill 87, as the Japanese only offered light resistance. With its immediate objective fulfilled, Collins then ordered the 27th to continue the pursuit of the enemy towards Cochabamba, while the 161st was to capture Hill Z and then turn north to follow the pursuit. By midday, the Americans had swiftly seized Hills 88 and 89, preparing to continue their drive towards Hill 90. In the afternoon, the 1st Battalion would then shoot its way through to ascend Hill 90, successfully capturing its crescent, as well as that of Hill 91 by nightfall. These developments completely threw Japanese plans into turmoil, with the 17th Army immediately ordering a withdrawal to Cape Esperance. As the 38th Division began to extricate its units, the 2nd Division of General Maruyama, reinforced with the Yano Battalion, suddenly saw itself threatened by the Cam Division on the coast and the 25th Division on its flank. Because of this, in the early hours of January 23rd, Maruyama decided to pull back and abandon Cochabamba. Concurrently, since January 22nd, the 6th Marines had been pushing along the beach and encountering stiff resistance. But with the withdrawal of the 2nd Division, the Americans began to roll westwards on January 23rd. At the same time, the 27th Regiment launched a two-pronged attack on its sector, with its 3rd Battalion rapidly seizing Hills 98 and 99. Upon capturing the latter, the 1st Battalion was released to attack Cochabamba, successfully probing forward to the high ground and capturing the main Japanese base by the early afternoon. In a day and a half, the 1st Battalion had advanced 7,000 yards through the jungle at the loss of 73 men to fully fulfill all of Patch's original objectives. By nightfall, the 6th Marines were attacking the Japanese forces that had failed to withdraw, and on January 24th, the last remnant of the 27th Regiment would be annihilated on a ridge just east of Cochabamba. With the link-up of the 25th and Cam Divisions, General Patch then decided to narrow his front, as he believed that an enemy counter-offensive was looming on the horizon. But although the terrain beyond the Poha River was to the advantage of the defenders, the 6th Marines and the 27th Regiment were to continue the pursuit. In turn, the Japanese kept their withdrawal westwards, establishing coast defense units from the sick and wounded and deploying the Yano Battalion along the Mamura River by January 25th. Encountering independent groups of enemy units, the 27th Regiment had to stop short of the Poha on January 25th, but the 6th Marines would continue forward along the coast, finally engaging the Yano Battalion the following day. Yano would offer fierce and strong resistance against the enemy attacks, successfully delaying the American advance for 2 days, and finally withdrawing behind the Benegi River by January 29th. On January 30th, the 147th Regiment took over the pursuit, but its advance stalled at the Benegi as it faced heavy opposition, although the defenders would also describe considerable losses among its forces during this time. Finally, the Japanese would continue their withdrawal westwards during the night, and the 147th would finally cross the Benegi by February 1st. But as the land offensive was happening, there were also other developments unfolding at sea. By January 23rd, Admiral Halsey had decided to carry out an air bombardment of Munda and a naval bombardment of the Vila Stanmore area on Kolombangara, where a new Japanese airfield was being constructed. Thus, Admiral Ainsworth was instructed to conduct another bombardment with his vessels, this time from the Kula Gulf. After cunningly slipping away from Japanese aircraft, Ainsworth successfully fired nearly 2,000 6-inch shells with his 2 cruisers and another 1,500 rounds of 5-inch with his destroyers, inflicting heavy material damage on Kolombangara and effectively delaying the Japanese construction effort. Ainsworth would then withdraw at full speed, managing to avoid any enemy retaliation. Meanwhile, as a prelude to Operation KE, the Japanese staged an air superiority campaign with 3 major daylight attacks set for January 25th, 27th and 30th, and with night harassment raids of 3 to 10 aircraft to Guadalcanal, Port Moresby and Espiritu Santo. The January 25th attack, with 76 Zeros and 18 G4M Bettys, was very disappointing, losing 5 aircraft and suffering heavy damage on many more, without any apparent gain. The next attack, carried out by 9 Ki-48 bombers, 74 Ki-43 fighters and 2 Ki-46 reconnaissance planes of the 6th Air Division on January 27th, fared much better, successfully taking down 2 P-38s, 4 P-40s and a Wildcat to the loss of 6 Ki-43s. Yet overall the results were similarly disappointing. In the meantime, due to the Japanese accumulation of resources in the South Pacific for Operation KE, the Americans had been led to believe that another major enemy offensive was incoming. In response to this threat, Admiral Halsey virtually deployed all his vessels in the area, determined to deal a crushing blow to the IJN before a counterattack could even be started. Thus, near sunset on January 29th, a total of 6 task forces had been sent to the southern Solomons area, including 2 fleet carriers, 2 escort carriers, 3 battleships, 12 cruisers and 25 destroyers, with the objective of covering the relief of the 2nd Marine Division, but also of luring and defeating the enemy navy in a decisive battle. Rear Admiral Robert Giffen commanded the new Task Force 18, which was a newcomer to the South Pacific that had just arrived after participating in Operation Torch in the North African campaign. Giffen was a rigid, by-the-book commander, and disdained Halsey's spontaneity and permissive attitude, and on the night of January 29th, he was wholly focused on complying with a directive from Halsey to rendezvous off Cape Hunter with the 4 destroyers of the Cactus Striking Force, a task that forced him to detach his 2 escort carriers to up his speed. Once these units merged, Giffen would then lead a daylight sweep up the slot as the last 4 transports with army replacements discharged at Lunga on January 30th. Unfortunately for him, as a submarine had detected the American force, Admiral Kosaka had decided in the afternoon to send 16 G3M and 16 G4M bombers from Rabaul to practice their mastery of a new tactic, night aerial torpedo attacks. Giffen was not expecting to be hit by an air attack. Instead, his main concern was the heavy submarine activity in the area, so he decided to adopt an anti-submarine formation, with his cruisers in 2 columns, spaced 2,500 yards apart, and with his destroyers spread along a semicircle 2 miles ahead of the cruiser columns. Furthermore, although his detached escort carriers put up groups of Wildcats and TBFs for air defense, the overcast would frustrate their attempts to police the skies. Meanwhile, the 2 Japanese aircraft groups closed in from the west, but then decided to circle around astern of their prey to gain the black backdrop of the eastern sky. At sunset, as Task Force 18 zigzagged northwest 50 miles north of Rennell Island and 160 miles south of Guadalcanal, several of Giffen's ships started to detect the incoming enemy aircraft. Yet, as the Admiral had previously insisted on maintaining absolute radio silence, Giffen decided not to give any orders in regards to these contacts. Thus, at 1919, the Japanese attack started, with the 16 G4Ms of Lieutenant Nakamura Tomu falling on the unsuspecting American vessels. Nakamura's bombers would miss all of their torpedoes, however, with 1 aircraft splashing astern of Chicago, and with only 1 possible dud getting scored over Louisville. Despite this, Giffen refused to alter his task force speed nor course, hell-bent on making his rendezvous, and even ordering his ships to stop the zigzagging. This simplified the task of the Japanese reconnaissance aircraft, which began dropping flares and floatlights to mark the course and speed of the American forces. With this data at hand, Lieutenant Commander Higai Joji started an attack with his 15 G3M bombers at about 1938. Although Higai perished in the attack along with another bomber, 2 torpedoes would successfully hit the Chicago, causing heavy damage and bringing the cruiser to a stop. In response, Giffen did not see fit to change course 180 degrees until 2008, with Louisville slowly taking the crippled Chicago under tow away from the battle area. But Halsey immediately stepped in and decided to send the destroyer Sands and the tug Navajo to relieve Louisville, while he also ordered the carrier Enterprise to augment the air patrol over Task Force 18. Search planes from Rabaul would continue to hunt for the American vessels on the morning of January 30th, and as Admiral Kosaka learned of Giffin's withdrawal, he decided to send another airstrike in daylight to finish off the Chicago. By midday, 11 G4M bombers under Lieutenant Commander Nishioka Kazuo, based at Kavieng and staging through Bukha, had lifted off to strike at the crippled cruiser. Australian coast watchers in the Solomons and radio intelligence experts, however, quickly discovered this prospect and informed Halsey, who decided to order Giffin to make for Afate with his battle-worthy cruisers. Thus, at 1500 hours, Giffin left the Chicago covered by 6 destroyers and hauled off to the east, stripping Chicago of the formidable defense of the anti-aircraft batteries of his other cruisers, and taking with him most of the air cover. By 1540, there were only 10 Wildcats on air patrol over Enterprise, with 4 of them drifting 40 miles to chase and shoot down a G4M scout bomber. Nishioka's bombers initially appear to have gone after Enterprise, then about 40 miles southeast of Chicago. But upon spotting the Wildcats on air patrol that were waiting to intercept them, the Japanese decided to turn to attack the crippled cruiser, which lacked aerial defenders except for 4 fighters that were chasing the striking group as it entered the anti-aircraft fire from the escorting destroyers. Though 2 of the bombers would be shot down before they could release their ordnance, Nishioka's bombers would successfully release their torpedoes in less than a minute. 4 hits would be immediately scored over Chicago, causing such tremendous damage that the cruiser had to be abandoned and would finally sink 20 minutes later with the loss of 62 crew members. Another torpedo would also hit the Lavalette, causing heavy damage on the destroyer and killing 21 or 22 of her crew. During these furious seconds, 6 more of Nishioka's bombers would be shot down after dropping their load, and after failing to locate the remaining ships, only 4 Bettys would be able to limp back to Shortland. With the sinking of Chicago, the Navajo would then take the Lavalette under tow, and it would successfully save the destroyer thanks to its efforts. With the disastrous conclusion of the Battle of Rennell Island, Admiral Nimitz was left fuming and frustrated, directly blaming Giffin for the loss of Chicago. The Japanese, meanwhile, widely publicized the results of these engagements, believing to have sunk a battleship and 3 cruisers. But most importantly, Admiral Kosaka was relieved to know that one of the enemy task forces had departed the area, leaving the Americans with less naval strength for the incoming first evacuation run. Next week we'll continue to cover the evacuation of Guadalcanal as Operation KE is set into motion and the Guadalcanal campaign is finally brought to its epic conclusion, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.